Signalis is overwhelming. Not in terms of difficulty or gameplay mechanics, those are better described as oppressing. No, Signalis is overwhelming thematically. Trying to find meaning in it comes easily and naturally at first, then it becomes difficult and elusive, and then, before you know it, there's meaning everywhere, in everything. It all just becomes overwhelming. Signalis is everything and nothing, multitude and void, all at once. It is horrifying in so many ways, and yet it is beautiful. All that it is warrants a closer look at both Signalis and the act of analysis itself. When an author states that the curtain was blue, what does that actually mean? If I recall an angrier high school-aged archivist, it means that the curtain was blue, and trying to analyze the blueness further is foolishness, a waste of time. The analysis itself is a lesson in poor writing. If the author meant something by the curtain's color, then they should have said so more explicitly. But after stumbling through college literary theory, I started to understand how people can get something more out of the color. Literary theory, or literary criticism, is the act of interpreting and studying literature, attempting to reach a logical and reasonable understanding of not only what a text's author intends for it to mean, but also what different cultures and ideologies render it capable of meaning. The concept didn't fully stick for me until I tried examining Twilight through a lens of Mormon doctrines and practices, but even after that, it was never really my strong suit. What did stick was the dynamic between surface and depth. Respectively, the outermost, obvious meaning of the work that nearly everyone who has read the text likely sees and agrees on, and a concept not fully explicitly in the text, something that requires recognition of what's implied, suggested, or hidden. Naturally, busted English major that I am, I found more joy in digging into video games than I did the literary canon. The criticisms of Ayn Rand's objectivism in Bioshock, the pro-war framing of Call of Duty, the anti-savior complex reads in Spec Ops: The Line, the sense of cosmic insignificance and significance in Outer Wilds, even how we manifest and overcome fear itself via Pajama Sam. The depth of these stories in this medium was what brought me a sense of purpose. But what academia tends to not teach is the act and value of the surface reading, or a reading from a blank lens of theory. Think of the stories you experienced or consumed when you were younger. Before we knew theory, before we knew criticism, we still found meaning in the stories we took in. From written works to TV series to movies, there is meaning that we made in what we chose to enjoy, in and out of education. It's what we glean from a simple read of the story, what the author puts out on the surface. Easy pickings, one might argue, but universal. And that brings us back to Signalis. What is it? What is it trying to be? What is it trying to say? Or is it trying to say anything at all? Imagine a theater production written by a playwright and performed by actors. No matter where you're sitting in the theater, you're watching the same production as everyone else at that moment. Same as a book or a movie or a game. You're experiencing the same narrative as everyone else who has chosen that piece. The same sentences, the same shots, the same mechanics. Back to the theater. From one performance to another, think about how lighting can change a scene's mood, or where the spotlight lands can influence where an audience's attention is drawn. In a highly reductive sense, that's what literary analysis is. Shining a spotlight on a certain part of the text, drawing our eye to a new facet we might have missed before. Think of literary theories as a program applied to the stage mechanics. It changes a scene's lighting, spotlights other aspects, amplifies volume, or influences the pit orchestra's tone. When you change how the play is viewed, your view on the play changes. It's still the same play as it was before, the presentation is just different. Thomas Martin, a professor of English at Wheaton College, breaks down the big question of how we define literary theory, from lenses to tools to recipes. In the matter of the interpretation of art, we take these perceptions or perspectives and we add them up to see what greater understanding they offer. Even two lenses on a single pair of spectacles provide this function in the most obvious of ways. Each vantage point is partial, knows its vision is partial, nor will and does not insist its one lens is true, as if that ended the story. Instead, each coordinates its lesser information with the lesser information of the other as it seeks areas of agreement. Insofar as their lesser information overlaps, they reconcile what they know with one another to attain more knowledge. Their divergence exists for the sake of convergence, their multiplicity for the sake of unity. With this, we recognize that all readings and interpretations exist independently of one another, while simultaneously capable of complementing one another. As we come to terms with one perspective on a text, we can use it to inform another and another. All perspectives help us individually come to terms with, examine, and find meaning in various works. But, most importantly, and what was lost on my early understanding, is that no one reading is more valid than another. Themes and interpretations all exist in a nebula around the text, all valid, all present. How can we examine Signalis like this? There is an ongoing war in Signalis' setting, and its fascistic leadership and propaganda has a choking stranglehold on what is permitted and not, with harsh sanctions in place for anyone who deviates from that norm. Players controlling the replica unit Elster on a search mission for her missing crewmate encounter survivors and records of the conflict's impact. And then themes, ideas, and questions start to emerge. Perhaps the story of Signalis is all in service to how far humanity has to go before we're ready for interstellar travel, no matter how advanced some of our technology has become. How the only workaround for AI implementation may be full-blown synergism with a human element. That data alone will never suffice. Like a human and grieves like a jam human intelligence into a machine. Should we mourn it when it dies? Does humanity actually, truly deserve to live? Are we real? How horrifying is it that we are life form of the cosmos, and how our entire lives, our identities, who we are, past our pale blue dot? Should we keep trying to create and refine AI? Are we ready for what that truly entails? What it means for us and for them? Our promise makes a house of distinctions. What is love to a being that possesses you to stop, but has had that can't advance any further? It's only defined more than an advancement. Are we there already? The concept of memory and how they change with time betray our own thoughts and emotions crave solitude for our entire lives. This is how all secret holes secretly are digged where Earth's pores ought to suffice, and things never to walk back to. What does it mean to live? Some literature is a nebula, its potential meaning floating gently around the nucleus of a story. Signalis feels more like a meteor shower. As soon as you've gotten to one impact point, one perspective, another one has hit the ground, and another, until it becomes overwhelming. You have to run, you have to escape, you have to protect yourself. The potential is overwhelming, the perspectives incalculable. Narratives can be overwhelming. Whether through heavy subject matter, how a story is presented, think soundtracks, the use of tension, etc., or how it's experienced, especially in games, especially in the horror genre, they can be made to elicit that response. But that sense of being overwhelmed passes, like peaks and valleys, as strong narratives are often designed. That sense of being overwhelmed is temporary. Signalis is manageable on the mechanical side, if not nerve-wracking from time to time. Where it becomes overwhelming is how many different ways it can be considered, the long-term sense of drowning in a sea of meaning. Through that sense of crushing potential, we retreat inward, defaulting to a singular, agnostic perspective as some form of literary survival instinct. There's too much going on, so we need to shut down. And that's reasonable. Signalis is a lot of things all at once, and one after the other almost too quickly to keep up with. It's a cautionary tale of our own human relations, alit with anti-war sentiment. A cyberpunk-esque trepidation to technology. A biological look inward at our own humanity through body horror. A reminder of our insignificance amidst both nature and society via cosmic horror. A reminder of the significance we create for ourselves in our own worlds. A story of independence, of connection, of who we are against who we are forced to be. Wants versus needs, technology and humanity, and both its marriage and separation. Reality and memories, life and death. It is too much. Death by 1,000 literary meteors. And so we recoil. What isn't often taught is finding meaning in the absence of lenses. These days, obsessed as we are with lore and icebergs, deeper and deeper meanings, the difficulty can be in trying to take a piece at face value. No spotlights, no perspective, no agenda, just what the creator has presented. These surface-level interpretations are generally directly based on the creator's narrative as it is immediately presented, or otherwise, what is evident, perceptible, and apprehensible in texts, what is neither hidden nor hiding. A surface is what insists on being looked at, rather than what we must train ourselves to look through. Many theorists, critics, and academics stand against surface readings, believing texts to be mere text through which we apply higher forms of thinking and analysis. Others argue the surface is an important layer. Surface as literal meaning is the literal reading of the text, removing all sense of subtext from a narrative. Others embrace the surface as an affective and ethical stance, choosing to examine a work on its own independent merits instead of through the perspective of other criticism. The surface reading is valid in its own right. On one hand, not everyone has the time, the ability, or the desire to perform deep dives into various works, nor does that diminish those works' subjective meanings for the audience. On the other hand, we can learn a great deal by simply taking a storyteller's story at that surface value. What matters to them enough to say in story, what may have driven them to say as such, where they were coming from to begin with. But that all brings us back to Signalis. The surface is overwhelming, alit with 100 perspectives and 1,000 thoughts. When even the surface is so overwhelming that our reaction is to retreat inward, what does that mean for the piece? What does that mean for our analysis? As I crawled with Elster through the Sierpinski 23 facility, I kept thinking of how I could possibly make sense of everything Signalis was presenting to me. And as I became overwhelmed, I started to gravitate to the one consistency among it all: feeling. Oftentimes, dread. Occasionally, relief. Sorrow, melancholy, regret, vindication, and so on. I encountered terror and both ran from and fought against it. I discovered horrible fates at the hand of a man-made machine. I questioned who I was and what I was doing. I dove into horrible pits with only a prayer that I could crawl back out. I lamented a system designed to churn through young people like meat. I wished I could do more for the few allies I discovered. I tried to understand, and in doing so, simply felt. I used to think there was a right way and a wrong way to interpret texts, but now it helps me to think of it as a kaleidoscope. The device is the same, singular, between users, but how we hold it, the light we hold it to, how the stones are jumbled at the lens, those are all unique. The analysis changes for every viewer as often as they adjust their perspective. Likewise, to defend one perspective on a piece does not diminish another perspective. They can both exist independent of each other, just as they can complement each other and help one another become more than they were. There are innumerable ways to interpret a story, all stemming from a singular experience. Valid 2 is the reading without interpretation, which is how I ultimately ended up looking at Signalis. Art makes us feel, but what it makes you feel, what it makes me feel, can be two wildly different feelings. But it makes us feel. And past any examinations, critiques, or analyses, that will be what helps a story live on the longest. The mark it leaves on our souls. Sometimes a piece is simply capable of making us feel things, be it catharsis, elation, despair, fear, hope, or otherwise. But that may be the most powerful effect a piece can have. There are innumerable ways a story can make you feel, all stemming from a singular experience. So, Signalis. What is it? It is a survival horror game about memories, humanity, and dreams. It is upsetting and unsettling in a very particular way, but never so difficult as to frustrate players into an inescapable corner. What is it trying to be? It is trying to be mechanically accessible to an audience of players accustomed to rising tension and spiking terror. It is trying to be narratively crushing, pulling out all the stops when it comes to its themes, atmosphere, and pathos. It is trying to be unnerving and overwhelming to the senses and the mind. What is it trying to say, or is it trying to say anything at all? It's trying to say everything in a language that lacks the words, and nothing as that language overwhelms us in its attempt. There are no right or wrong ways to look at it. How much you can take of its thematic onslaught, how you choose to approach its problems, how you feel in a world designed against you, that's up to you. What Signalis is saying, or how much of it you can decipher, is up to you. Sometimes the blue curtain does mean something more than its color, whether by creator's intent or user's perspective. Sometimes the curtain is just blue, a description and nothing more. Sometimes with a storm of 1,000 perspectives, 1,000 takes, 1,000 ideas tearing across the sky just outside the windows, we need to draw the curtains. And fixating on what is left, all we can fathom is that the curtain is blue. And sometimes we are simply struck with feeling when we behold the curtain, colored in some shade that is simply beautiful. What does Signalis mean to you? How do you make sense of it? How does it make you feel? Whether your thoughts manifest as a full-blown analysis, an in-depth critique, or a quiet recognition of the emotions it made you feel, your reading of Signalis and any work of art is your own and equally valid. No right answer, no wrong answer. Just your answer.